Hi guys, and welcome to episode 8 of the Elbadon podcast. As you can probably tell from the title, I'm joined once again by Red Bull KTM data engineer Matt Last. So Matt, do you want to introduce yourself again as you're back?
Oh, hello guys. Yeah, you just said it. Matt from Red Bull KTM IO.
Yes, back by popular demand, which is quite nice.
Well, I'll take your word for that.
Yeah, well, I've seen the comments, so yeah, it's all good. I've had loads of messages about your last pod. So yeah, back by popular demand. So glad to have you back after
Thank you.
not the best Le Mans. So I'm glad you come on.
Yeah, no. For us, it's dust ourselves off and move on.
Yeah, I think it's the only way you can do it, and after Le Mans. So yeah, what I did have is a fair few messages from people actually asking what your normal weekend looks like. So if it's cool with you, can you take us through a normal weekend for you?
Yeah, I mean, what from pre-event or when I turn up?
Yeah, when you rock up, shall we say?
Okay, so well, busy. Basically, the way it works for us is that we all travel on a Tuesday, the whole team. So we're all ready to rock and roll by Wednesday mornings when the trucks come in. When the trucks come in, we set the pig boxes up. So as a data engineer and my colleague as well, our responsibility is the pit box loom. So get that down, make sure the air is all plugged in, the Ethernets are all plugged in, so we can download the bikes and have all the servers talking to each other, the laptops talking to each other. That's really important to get down quick, so then when the box is up, we don't have to touch it again for the weekend. Once the box is up, it's then a case of stripping the bikes down. So the bikes get stripped on a Wednesday down to every last nut and bolt, and they will then start to be cleaned. It's then our time as data engineers to then look at the loom. So we take these off the bikes ourselves. We clean the loom and then inspect it for any damages, like if there's vibrations and like electrical boots come off, or it's been rubbing against a certain part of the engine or carbon fiber, then we might have to make some repairs or even replace them. So that's our time to look at that. Thursday, then the bikes are all put back together. So while the mechanics are doing that, that's typically my time then to sit with the crew chief. We set up the sort of pre-event. I do this as well. Set the spec sheets up and sort of just fine-tune the electronic strategies sort of from the previous race. Sort of come up with a base for the event we're at.
Yeah.
And then with the crew chief, we talk about strategy for the weekend. So we look at the tyres that are used, when we're going to use them, different scenarios, what we could do to the bike. We look at the previous comments from the last 1 or 2 years, again with the tyres, with the setup, what the riders say about the tracks. And so we sort of freshen our head what to expect. And that's what can be incorporated into our plan through the weekend.
Yeah.
Then the rider turns up on Thursdays, and then we then go through that plan with the rider. So he's fresh in his head of what to expect, and again also the comments of previous years. So if a rider says, "Oh, we get some bumps in this corner," or rears pushing the front, or anything like this, it's one less thing for the rider to say to us. Of course, he says it, and we can try and help, but also for the whole team, we know it's a character of the track.
Yeah.
So that saves us sort of searching for things in the future. And then we do a track walk just after lunch, just to familiarise ourselves with the track visually. If anything's changed, if there's cars have been around there, there's typically new bumps in braking areas. And stuff like this, and to sort of get our eye in. And then by the time we're back, the bikes are ready to start. So we put the electrics in, strategies, ECU stuff for the weekend. The bikes are then warmed up. We then have to check to make sure the bikes are fully functioning with the sensors, stuff like this.
Yep.
And then sort of that's pre-weekend done. And then come Friday, sort of again, bikes warm up. You just double check them before the sessions. When the bikes are out, rider comes in, and while the bikes are out, we actually can communicate with the rider. So we have dash messages we can send, in which, I don't know, if we want to try a different map, it's not to say that's the right direction to go in, but to get some feedback from the rider.
Yeah.
So get him to try something, or if we need him to come to the box on time or at any point, we say, okay, box call. When the riders come in, we've got about 4 minutes of them being in to download the data, take their initial comments, look at the data, and make a change. So it's all sort of on your toes, stuff like this.
4 minutes.
More or less, you probably got
about a lot of time.
By the time they do their in lap, come to the box, and go back out, you probably, in a 40-minute session, you're looking at 8 to 10 minutes in the box. So yeah, 4 or 5 minutes you've got to do all of that. So yeah, you're always on your toes and stuff like that. So quickly, initial comments, look at the numbers quickly in the data, and we make a change. It goes back out, and then after the session, you do a deeper analysis. So you see if the change you made was positive or negative, usually positive, and then what can you further do for the next session? And then there we can start to look at strategies again, like electronics. Obviously, track to track is different in terms of level of grip. And so we do that through the weekend, and then Saturday night we sit down with the rider. There's not usually too much to change to the bike, because obviously you've got the best bike by qualifying. Yeah. But you just sort of talk about the race, what you've learned from the weekend, how you're going to apply that in the race. And sort of, again, backup options. So sort of a backup tyre that might have the least amount of laps on, stuff like that. Strategies of when you'll use certain engine brakes through the race, when through the race. And yeah, that's pretty much a weekend in a nutshell. And then as soon as the race is done, we pack up in the truck, and that goes to the next event usually.
Yeah, like a well-oiled machine.
Pretty much.
Oh, like the amount that goes into a weekend. I think the rider has the easy job, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, they've got to implement what we ask them to do. But it is go behind the scenes. Like, we'll get to the track on a weekend at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. No, actually, this year with the earlier schedules, probably sort of between 7:30, 7 in the morning we're at the track. And we won't leave until 8 or 9 at night. Sort of when we go and get lunch, it's in hospitality for 20 minutes, back to the box, and you're just continuously analysing, every little piece of detail, whether it's suspension, whether it's engine, whether it's throttle, whether it's the rider. And a lot of the time, riding a bike is 80-90% the rider and 10-20% the bike. So the rider really influences a lot, and the smallest bit of movement or change in style or something really makes a big difference.
Yes.
So yeah,
it's not like F1, is it? Where the drivers just sort of like ballast almost.
Yeah, and it's also different for a driver, because they've got simulators that they can practice in.
Yes.
A bike doesn't have a simulator, so that's our biggest challenge, is that it really is rider dependent. In a simulator for a car, you could put weather conditions, tire types, the same geometry that you're going to be using. But a bike, we don't get that opportunity.
Yeah, like the bike simulator is riding the bike.
Pretty much. I mean, there's bike simulators out there, but they don't have the same inertias and feeling that you actually get on a bike.
Yeah, it's impossible to replicate. So I got to be honest, that's an old hectic weekend, and it's a good look for people who might not know what behind the scenes is. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it's intense, but every day's different. Every morning and afternoon's different. You're on your toes all the time, and I guess that's part of the job you love. The biggest thing is just preparation. If you're prepared for all situations, it definitely makes your life easier.
Yeah.
But it's
expect the unexpected.
Exactly.
So yeah, there's a nice look at a nice weekend in the IO squad. So yeah, thanks for coming on. Shall we go on to the race because there was a lot to discuss over this weekend. So
Yeah, there.
should we start with Moto 3 before we get on to your Moto 2 on the whole? And
Yep.
should we start with Danny Olgado and Tech 3 winning at home at last? I
No, happy for. I used to work for them, so and seeing the home fans there in Le Mans for Tech Free, I can only imagine how much that meant for them.
yeah, like you could see Hervé was just going nuts. He just didn't know what to say. His interview with Simon Crafar on the World Feed, obviously you wouldn't have heard it because he was working,
Right.
but he was going mad. It was brilliant. It was just
Yeah.
so good to listen to. Um,
I was super happy when I saw Benoit, the mechanic, actually go up on the podium.
yeah,
He was my mechanic when I was crew chief for Bo and mechanic also when I was doing data for Bezecchi and Remy and Xavi. And he is one of the hardest working people in the paddock. And he actually was born near Le Mans. So
okay,
for him to go up on that podium was just icing on the cake, I think, for him and the Tech Free squad.
yeah, it must
Was,
have
was
meant a lot to him.
yeah, for sure, 100%.
I didn't realize that. That's pretty cool. That is. That's good to hear. That is. It was just perfect all round. I bring Olgado up because leading the championship now, thriving away from IO. Like obviously, I know you work for IO, this that, and the other, but it's like, did you expect him to do better at Tech 3?
Um, in the end, the bikes are so similar, you know. Um, Ultimately, they had Dennis last year, and Dennis was also successful there. So it's not a surprise, no. Um, However, the what I would be surprised. I mean, okay, when Pedro was motor free, Pedro was special in a race situation.
Mm.
But for Danny's second year, that got one podium towards the end of last year, he's a totally different rider this year. I mean, even looking how he is on track, he's just an animal. But speaking with him on the weekend, actually, sort of it was on Friday, I think. I asked him what's different, and he's just got a structure to his life now. It sounds crazy, but for instance, I think it was he wakes up at 6 in the morning, he goes to the gym, comes back, walks his dog for an hour, comes back, and then goes out training on his bikes, whether that's motocross, around a track, or whatever. And that's sort of his daily routine. Um, and just by having that structure mentally, I think that prepares riders in a totally different way, like to any
Yes.
human being, just sort of that schedule, routine, and it's all a bit more worth it then. If you were to have a bad weekend, you can say, well, at least I've given it my all at home and
Yeah.
at the track. So he's pulled out the stops and he's going for it.
Yeah. Like, do you think the family environment of Tech 3 is playing a part? Because obviously you've worked with them.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few different people there now, but still, Tech Free is probably one of the teams that It's just a family environment. Really, it is a superb team to be part of. Um, but yeah, I would say for Danny that helps. He's very close with his family, his dad and his sister, and his mum when she comes to the races. So he definitely likes to be around that environment, cuddled a lot by people and whatnot. But it works for him,
Yeah.
and look what it's doing. I hope for him that and Tech Free that it lasts for the season. And I would love Tech Free to win the title again, if it's not IO.
Yeah.
But no, he's doing all the right things, doing what you got to do to fight for titles.
Yeah. Which is, like, from my perspective, we knew he was good in Chev. And then
Yeah,
when he stepped up to IO, obviously he was meant to be Tech 3, then it was IO. And we were thinking, this kid could do bits here. It didn't quite go to plan, I'd suggest. Even though it was his rookie year, I think there was a good chance people expected more of him last year than what he actually delivered. Not all his fault.
Yeah, but on the flip side, I think that expectation comes from Pedro the year before,
Yes.
because Pedro rewrote the rules again for a rookie to come in and win a title. Like, it's been a long time since that happened. Well, Marquez was the last one to do that in GP sort of thing.
Yeah.
That was 13 now. So,
Yeah.
so for me, it almost gave the expectation that anyone can come into Moto 3 and do it, which just wasn't the case. Also, coming into the World Championship winning team.
Yes, I
But
think that's why I think people were expecting it, because it basically mirrored Pedro. And people were
yeah,
expecting him to do a Pedro, but you ain't going to do a Pedro.
I don't think. I think it is possible to do a Pedro, but it's just an exceptional year if that happens. You know, that doesn't come around often. So
yeah, so to have it 2 years in a row was never going to happen,
no,
was it?
exactly. I mean, gee, I look at IO Moto 2. Like, when was the last time? Okay, Zarco, but it's not often that a team wins the title 2 years in a row with two different riders. It's not normal that in motorcycle racing for that to happen. So yeah, expectations were high for Holgado, but equally, I don't think he's disappointed. At the end of the day, he's only in his second year.
Yeah, I think
well.
disappointed perhaps was the wrong word to use, but I think he didn't quite deliver what we expected then, shall we say, in terms of where he could have been.
Yeah, it's true that, yeah, for me last year when I watched him, he did drop off to the end at the end of races quite a lot. This was a concern of mine, because obviously from the CV to World Championship, the races are longer.
Yeah.
But okay, this year are a few laps shorter, but still, you've got to be in it to win it, and he's doing it now. So he learned a lot from last year, and he's applying it this year. So
yeah, that's the main thing, isn't it? Like, you absolutely can make mistakes as long as you learn from them, which I think he has done.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I'd like to see him sustain it, but
no, I believe he can. You know, once you've had that taste of victory, and once you've had that taste of success and how you got that success, as long as then you keep up that routine, then
yeah, don't change it, bring it forward.
Exactly.
Yeah, speaking of winning taste, Ivan Otola still in the mix.
Yeah, hats off to him. Sort of, I watched him over the weekend. I'm thinking, no, he's not really there over the weekend, but he's turning out to be a proper racer. You know, you can always count on him to be there on a Sunday.
Yes, I think he is the best racer in that Moto3 field at the moment, in terms of a Sunday man, in inverted commas.
Yeah, he's definitely one of the Sunday men. I'd also say a few others are, but he's certainly, once he's in that front group, you know he's got a chance to be on the podium now.
Yes, which I'm still surprised. Like I said on the last pod you came on, I'm still quite surprised that he's able to be up there because of the lack of experience both for him and for MTA.
Yeah, but as a rider, once something clicks and you know the sensation it gives to you, you then work towards that to become normality. So whether that's, okay, more your sensation on the bike and more what to look for on the bike, you know, and once you're in that zone and whatnot, you just you stay there, you know what to expect, and you work around that.
Yeah. So Holgado title contender, Otola title contender.
Yeah.
I'd say Sasaki title contender.
Yes.
Get to the other one who I think should be a title contender in a second is not. He's flattering to deceive at the moment. Dennis Onju should be a title contender, not quite at the moment. Is there anybody else do you think is thereabouts? I don't think Moreira is quite yet.
I'd like to say Masia.
Masia, yes.
I think he
Leopard know to win a Moto3 title.
Yeah, he I reckon will finish in top three.
Yeah, well, that's what he's doing basically every race, isn't it?
And you just got to be like I said last time, consistency.
Yeah, Mr.
You've got to
Consistency.
be there. Yeah. You've got to be there, and Massia every race now is more or less there.
Yeah, which the Leopard bike is the sole Honda flag at this point.
Pretty much, yeah.
Sad to see, because you expect more of a big company like Honda, but realistically, the bike is just not as good as the KTM. It just isn't.
No, and I think it goes. I think we mentioned it last time that Japanese manufacturers are struggling at the moment, and it comes away from bike racing because automotive engineering in the world is going down the route of electrical. So, as big companies, and I think that's not the reason Suzuki left, but it's a area they're going down. It's they're looking at electric cars, and you've got to start investing money into that, which means you've got to take money from other areas and industries.
Yep.
I think in one reason, and that's why the motorcycle world is suffering from the Japanese side, because they don't have the money and the funding to put towards the racing improvements.
Yes. Yes. Also, like Honda, Suzuki, just an example. They make cars and bikes.
Yeah.
Yam only make bikes, but like they do make a lot of other. They're part of like an industry. But Ducati don't make cars. KTM, not counting the Expo, don't make cars. They are fully bike focused.
Yes, Aprilia,
yeah, like part of the Piaggio group, but Piaggio only make bikes. There's no that has to be played apart.
Audi own Ducati, but Audi have their own financial department.
Yeah,
and Ducati have their own.
Yeah, so like it has to be played apart in terms of ability to put not only funds in, but personnel, commitment.
Yeah,
because people buy more cars than bikes. If you need your company to survive, you go in the car route. If you make cars, it's
certainly a big. On the flip side, in Asia, the biggest market is bikes. I mean, don't know what the ratio is, but I'm pretty confident there's a higher ratio of bikes to cars on the road there.
Yes, like 150 and lower in the it's like
exactly.
It's a huge industry.
They make their money there, but they're not. And when you go to those races, the fans absolutely love it. But yeah, it's a different market, let's say. So, is that what's affecting Honda and in Moto3 and GP and the other Japanese guys? Who knows? But I think next year, I believe there are more wall openings, let's say, that allow newer bikes to come in for Moto3. So I know KTM have got something that they've been developing for some time, but whether it's going to be the same for Honda, I don't know. I don't feel so, but
yeah, because there was the freeze during COVID in Moto3, wasn't there?
That's right. Yeah.
So yeah, it ends this year. Efren Vasquez will have been pounding the laps on this new KTM. So that's
exactly.
That's going to be scary because he knows how to ride a Moto3 bike.
Yeah, he does, and I think they've even been using it in the CEV at some point. So they've got data and stuff, but I don't see Honda with that commitment.
Yeah, I believe it was David Alonso last year was using the 24 bike, but I could be wrong on
that. Possibly, I'm not sure.
Don't quote me on it, but I'm fairly sure. But I'm open to being corrected on that. Going on, keeping on KTM, Dennis Öncü, who I've just mentioned. Is he ever going to win a race at this point?
Oh, he'll win races. I think he's probably been a bit frustrated with himself because, for me, the Argentina crash he shouldn't have thrown away. He was in the lead and whatnot. So he's just almost like Sasaki. He's trying to recover from that now. He's proving he's a fast rider on his own, and in a group. But for whatever reason, it's just not happening for him in the races. which is a shame because both Jerez and Le Mans, he showed a lot of potential.
He feels to me like Raul Fernandez did in Moto3.
Oh, yeah, I guess so.
Size as well. Like, he's a tall boy now.
He,
He's
he is
bulked
tall.
out.
Yeah, he is tall. And I have to say, I thought to myself, he tucks in well on a bike. But yeah, he is a tall boy. But he doesn't seem to lose speed. He prepares everything well and whatnot for the straights. But I'm confident it will come for him.
Yeah.
He just needs that. The last few laps of a race, he needs to sort out.
Yeah, because like as I just said, I'm seeing total mirrors with Raul Fernandez. Because when Fernandez in the year before he went up to Moto2, he was qualifying brilliantly and then falling back first half of the year. And then I can't remember where he took the first win. I want to say it was Misano, but after that he couldn't stop winning.
Exactly, and like we said earlier, once you get the taste for it, you know how to manage it.
Yeah.
I think it's always. I think it was the same for me last year with Augusto. You know, you come to the championship winning team or what people think may be the best team, but when it doesn't happen, I think there must be a lot of doubt in the rider's head. But when it does happen, like it was this time for me last year with Augusto and Le Mans, and he took his first win in 3 years and ended up going on a superb form of podium for many races.
Yeah.
And that's just what you need sometimes. Ortola, he's had a taste for the podium and he knows what it takes. So Dennis, I think if he gets that first podium, then the rest will come.
Yeah, it's mad to think he's not actually even stood on a Moto3 podium yet.
No, exactly. Well, yeah, it will come for him. It will come.
I hope so, because not only for Dennis, he's clearly a talented rider, but
absolutely,
in terms of a different nationality being at the top, aside from Keenan, no Turks really have done anything.
Toprak?
Yeah, no, I mean like Keenan's bubble of riders.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing for Turkey. Like he has his bubble of, was it Can, Dennis, Bahatin, and Toprak.
Yeah.
Outside of that, Turkey have no one. So for him to be able to do that, and if he can start to win, it just ignites the whole country. Like when I went to Turkey, I saw Keenan on Red Bull cans.
Yeah. No, it's a big deal for them out there. Yeah.
So I really hope so. Last point was, we touched on him, Jaume Masia. Honda's only hope at this point, the only shining beacon. As you said, you think title contender. Is it time for him to move though? Like, at what I feel like he should have gone up to Moto2 about 3 years ago.
The problem is the class above always looks for the best person. If you can't get the best person, it's then, okay, the rider then that's second, third, or fourth in the championship, what teams are available? And a rider always wants to be in the best team, but the best teams always want the top rider. So it's a bit difficult. So in the last few years, especially Moto2 now, like Moto3 doesn't just, okay, other than Pedro, you don't just come in Moto3 now and win in Moto2. Those days have really gone. You're lucky enough to get a podium in your first year.
Yeah, but a podium is a big deal coming up as of right. You know what I mean? Like we are raving about Sergio Garcia being 6th.
Yeah. No, exactly. It's if you can do that in your first year, it's pretty impressive. I think again, I said last time, look at the guys that have won the championship in Moto2. They didn't get their first podium till their third season in the category, other than a few. Yeah. Moto2 is extremely hard, and Moto2 really fine-tunes the rider, and it's all about their ability to adapt to the category. Masia, yeah, what team would he have gone in the last few years? It's difficult. There weren't really free seats. You've almost got to come to a team, learn the category, and just be open-minded and work your way up. I think in Moto3, if you prove yourself in Moto3 as a top 3 rider, obviously you're going to get a better seat. But he is a top 3 rider, but he's not been a consistent top 3 rider until last year, I would have said.
Yes.
So
Agreed.
I think, and there wasn't a seat in Moto2 for him this year. So he said, okay, one more year Moto3, and I'll win the title. I'll try to. But if he's top 3 this year, for sure he'll be offered a seat in Moto2 next year with a team.
Yeah, someone has to pick him up at this point because he's been in Moto3 for quite a while now.
Yeah.
His experience in the class surely is going to be a positive.
I think for me, that's a positive with him is that he's been competitive on both machines. It's not just one bike he's been strong on. He can prove that he can adapt to bikes. If I was a manager looking for riders in Moto2, I'd say that's something to think about.
Yes, he's done well on. I think weirdly he's better on a Honda, which
probably suits his style more.
Not many people are better on a Honda in Moto3.
No, and speaking to him this year, there's pros and cons with both bikes, and it's just what you can do to make the most out of them. But again, that just shows adaptability, and he's got it. So he could be a competitive Moto2 rider in the future. But where he'll go next year, I don't know.
Yeah, someone has to pick him up. Otherwise he risks almost doing an Albert and being in Moto3 for 11 years,
Yeah, I mean, he'll have a future in Moto2 for sure. Let's see where it gets to.
Yeah, someone has to pick him up. Hopping on to Moto2 now. Can we get your perspective, first of all, of the weekend as a whole? You and Albert.
Well, Albert?
Yeah. Or Ayo on the whole, because obviously we'll get to Pedro in a bit, but Ayo on the whole.
I mean, pre-race was sort of what we expected. Obviously, coming from Jerez, Albert had 4 crashes in Jerez and salvaged some decent points in the race. We had a positive test on the Tuesday after Jerez, and we took what we'd learned there to Le Mans, and it was working. But with him, how can I say, Moto2 is a tough category, and you can't think whether you're a world champion or if you're in the best team or whatever, you can't expect to be at the front straight away. I think in any job you do in life, you've got to understand what it takes to be at the top.
Yes.
And it doesn't just come overnight. You've got to work at it.
Yes, absolutely.
So this is basically what we've been doing with Albert. And then the tests, he learnt a lot about this. So this is what we said to him coming to Le Mans. So through the weekend was not bad. 2 dry sessions and before qualifying and a wet session, and in all of them he was knocking on the door of it being in the top 10 and whatnot. Qualifying, we were a bit in general disappointed, not his fault, but with the yellow flags and sort of his fast lap got cancelled when Lowe's crashed, I think it was, in front of him. So that's racing, that's qualifying. So we could have been, I think, head of the 3rd row, but it wasn't to be. We were down in 12th. But Albert is good with his start. So when it got to the race, he had a good start. First lap made a row. Yeah. And we knew his pace as well with used tyres. Our strategy of the weekend was focusing with used tyres, so we feel that the race pace could have been good. Could have been good. Sadly, on the 2nd lap, he went down and took down Gonzalez and Canet. Fortunately, everyone all okay. But it was just a racing incident. Not even anyone's fault. It was just maybe with a full fuel tank at the start of the race, it was too much for the tyres.
Yes.
It just did not absorb a bump and went down. So I think he was confused because obviously he felt he did nothing wrong. And truthfully, like with respect to the data on his fastest lap, there was no major differences. the way he described it was like slipping on oil or water or something. So, but you couldn't see that in the data. But it literally just, with the level of grip at the start of the race, with the full fuel tank and whatnot, it just wasn't to be.
Unfortunately,
So frustrating, but that's racing.
Yep. It was a very expensive crash for Spidey in that. Every single one of them was wearing Spidey leathers in that incident, so that's it's going to cost him a bit.
Really? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's going to cost him a bit of money, that one.
Yeah, but that's a lot cheaper than the bike.
Yes, very much so. First of all,
fair play to Speedy though, because they obviously did their job and all stuck together. So
yeah, that's what I was just about to say. Like, first of all,
with
round
none
of
of them,
applause.
none of them were serious injuries.
Yeah, considering when we saw Canet sitting in the gravel trap pointing at his leg, I thought, oh, problems.
Yeah,
But,
no, I saw him afterwards. He was limping, and I asked if he was okay, and he said, "Yeah, fine." Yeah. So he's got 3 weeks to recover.
Yeah, dead leg or something probably. Because honestly, when you see a rider just sat in the gravel, your first thought is something's broken.
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
and like with the violence of that crash, it's a miracle nobody was seriously hurt. So count our blessings, I say with that.
No, exactly. So yeah, it wasn't the best ending to a weekend for Albert. Pedro as well. I think sort of the biggest gutting thing is obviously title contender and crashing out in the race. Now crashing out 2 years in a row while fighting at the front. That I think is a harder pill to swallow. Again, his race pace was really good over the weekend, and
yeah.
In Moto2, of course, you want to be at the front, but just to qualify on the front 2 rows is enough to be fighting at the front. So he, of course, being on the front row is what everyone wants, but he wasn't disheartened with 5th position.
And it didn't make a difference. Like, he knew he had the pace.
Exactly. Yeah, dust himself off, pick himself back up, and he's a sort of character. He learns quickly, and knocks you down, makes you stronger.
Yeah, like he's not the first at museum, won't be the last. Just
no, and also the next track is Mugello, where he won his first ever race in Moto2 last year. So I think for me,
that could be a problem. Yeah,
I think if he wins in Mugello, it's a bit of a dent in Arbolino, because obviously that's his home race.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Tony's not going to want to lose there.
No, I think for Pedro, he will push for that.
Yeah, as a mind game alone, that's going to be a bit of a crippler to Arbolino.
Yeah.
We obviously, Albert, Gonzalez, and Canet crashed, brought out the red flag. Cut to you in the box talking to Albert before the red flag went out. Obviously not too much detail, but what were you saying to Albert, like, about maybe going back out, maybe not?
We didn't even talk about that, because from our understanding at the time is that the riders have to come in with the bikes. Yeah. However, and it's something we need to clarify, because it's riders with the bikes within 5 minutes. However, this race, they then said on the screen that all riders were eligible to start. And the reason for that was because the race was under 3 laps. So we then just asked, like, what was the bike like? And he just said, like, the fairings were off, the dash was off, and then you look up at the screen, and at that point it said 12:29 was pit lane open.
Yes.
So we knew we weren't going to get out. And then we see on the TV they're running up the mechanics were running Sam's bike up pit lane. And then they extended the time, but the problem for us, our bike was on the other side of the track. It wasn't going to get back to the pits that quickly.
Yes.
So we sort of, I got a spare dash ready, but equally there was people saying that we're not going to go back out. So
yeah, it looked unlikely at best.
Yeah, exactly. And so then I actually said to the other side, look, if there's anything they need or whatever, but they were fine. They had everything under control. I think it was more speaking to Albert, trying to understand what happened. He was super confused. Like I said, he thought it was like oil or water or something on the track, because it happened so unexpectedly. And actually, if you watch the race restart, Pedro had exactly the same moment in the same corner.
Yes.
Um, and we sort of looked at each other, me and Geordie, the crew chief, were like, is there something? And the bike wasn't back at that point, so we didn't have the data.
Yeah.
And then the bike came back and we looked, but nothing to suggest there was anything on the track. And the race went on. No one had the same moment or crash there. So one of those things.
Yeah, because I asked because everybody will have seen it who was watching the coverage. The way you were waving your arms and very animated, I was wondering if Albert wanted to go back out or not.
I don't remember being animated, but I think it was more, where's the bike? Do we know what's going on with the bike? I think as well, when you see the time extended and you want to be on the grid, whether you're the rider or whether you're the team, you want to be on that grid.
Yeah.
So certainly sort of trying to find out where the bike was, what's broken on it, can we get it back? And in the end, the bike didn't even come back until the race had restarted. So
all three of them probably weren't in any fit state.
Well, I think there was maybe like even a 1 or 2 minute countdown timer when the bike actually got back, but there was no chance. No chance.
It took Lowe's team a good 6-7 minutes to actually fix his bike, and his was probably less damaged than Albert. So
yeah, exactly.
Game over, unfortunately. I think the implication of Pedro crashing means Arbolino now takes the championship lead by a full 25 points, meaning he can't lose the championship lead coming out of Mugello. Is that going to play a part, do you think?
If anything, I think it's only positive for Pedro. He likes to chase. He doesn't mind being in the lead either, but he doesn't like to chase. Doesn't mind to chase. So I think for him, it's only motivation, and it's more for Arbolino to lose now.
Yes.
In my opinion, and okay, it's racing, mistakes happen, but Pedro will learn and know that okay, maybe just sit in second. And I also look back. This time last year, I was in Jerez, actually. Augusta was 8th in the championship.
Yeah.
After round 4. Okay, he won in Le Mans, but that didn't promote him to first. He was still, I can't remember where he was last year after round 5 and a win. But he wasn't near the front and probably was even more points off the front. So it's a blimmin' long season.
Yes.
For me, we talk about the championship now, but I won't start thinking about the championship, or wouldn't think about the championship until at least after the summer break, probably before the overseas. I think let's see how the riders come back after the summer break, because long time off riding, you don't know what that's like. 5 weeks now with Kazakhstan cancelled, not being on a bike. They come back to Silverstone and they've got to get back in the groove again.
It's a long time off.
It is a long time off, and you've got to get the brain back working again.
Yeah, back in a race mode, as it were.
Yeah, so for me, let's see what happens. Who is the stronger rider going into the overseas? I think that is probably going to be a bigger part. Who's going to take control of the races for the 3-4 races before the overseas? I think that will be more what determines the championship.
Okay, because I asked because Arbolino with a full lead at home. There's just something about Italians at home in there that is like they step it up a notch more than seemingly more than anybody else.
I think anyone at home does that, But like I said, Pedro won last year in Mugello. He's going to go there with full confidence.
Yeah, that's going to be the big telling thing, I think, is that he really likes the place.
Yeah, and for me, it's nothing to worry about yet. Again, it's more of Tony can keep his calm and keep his head cool and stuff like that. Also, what the weather does. We've been to Mugello and it rains and
yeah, like I wasn't like in terms of championship. It was more Arbolino, as we know, is a nutcase. Like it seems like his highs are very high and his lows are very low. He's
Yeah,
going to come
but
off a high now, going into home.
sure, but if I was an Italian, Jesus, like if Mugello last year was probably the worst race for spectators. There was absolutely no atmosphere. Like usually the bank between is it 5 and 6 on the hill there is full.
Yeah,
it was not full at all. Like generally when I raced at Bemsey at club level, I feel there was more spectators at club level than there was at MotoGP in Mugello last year.
God,
It was so if there's no fans, I don't think a rider will be that up for it.
Yeah, I hope that's not the case then, because Mugello
No,
has the rep, doesn't
not.
it?
I think, and like last year, you come from France that last year had record attendance. This year had record attendance again at over 250,000, nearly 300,000.
Yeah.
And then to go to Mugello where there's not many will be
The
embarrassing.
Rossi effect.
Well, yeah. So let's see. I hope the fans come back out in Mugello and Misano. But yeah, Italy, they've got so much racing heritage that they need. Hopefully, with Ducati winning the title, it will help the Italian fans come back out.
Yes.
So
cross your fingers for that one.
Arbolino will thrive off that.
Yeah, I think so. Last point on Moto2, Sam Lowes, and his troubles, shall we say? He had a well, I thought it was a strange crash, but obviously, us talking off air just before, you gave a good explanation as to what you think happened. So,
yeah. For me, I saw the replay because obviously I was waiting to see the replay of Albert's crash, and they showed Sam's in many angles. And for me, he had too much banking, and he shifted too quick, and it looked like the level of grip just wasn't there with the shifting and the RPM, and he went down. Yeah, shifting in Moto2, you've got to be smooth. It's not about going down the gearbox like in Moto3, and you don't have seamless like MotoGP. At the end of the day, it's a road gearbox. You've got to treat it with a bit of respect. And yeah, he's, for me, a bit too much banking. And then you see when his foot pulls on the lever, the bike looks as if it's a bit unsettled. The bike wobbles and goes down. So,
yes.
My opinion of what I saw, but yeah,
you're in a better position than me to explain it. So I will. I think that's fair enough to take your word on that. He didn't need this after coming off such a dominant Jerez performance. Beating out Pedro fair and square at Jerez.
Absolutely, yeah.
To then qualify,
yeah,
qualify pole, and then throw it away in the manner he did. Okay, he came back for 15 for a point after starting from pit lane. Still an incredible ride.
Absolutely,
but
yeah.
What could have been?
Sure, VDS could have been on the podiums, have two bikes on the podium.
Absolutely. Should have had two bikes on the podium, I would suggest.
Yeah. Or certainly be top 5 because you never know how things are going to pan out. But still, he had the potential to be fine at the front. And maybe like Pedro, you just as a rider, you want to be the best, you want to be at the front, but sometimes you've also got to tell yourself, okay, I'll settle for second or third or fourth or fifth or whatever, and take home as many points as possible.
Yeah, which unfortunately for Sam has always been kind of his Achilles heel, isn't it? He's never been able to string a season together. 2020 was 2021, whichever it was the closest. Even then, he didn't.
Yeah, let's say this was his first one, I think, this year in the race. So step by step. If he can learn from this and go again, he'll be all right.
I hope so because Lowes is a quality rider. He clearly has the speed.
The next few races suit him as well. What he did with Arbolino take him out last.
Yeah, Arbolino took him out last year at Mugello. Yeah.
Which that wasn't great, but then he qualified on the front row with Augusto and Pedro, I think.
Yes,
right. And I think he even stuck it on the podium. So he's strong there. Assen, so many riders are strong in Assen.
Yeah.
So he can still kick off his season and still go strong.
Yeah. The only reason I say it is, since 2019 when he's returned, he's not been the most consistent rider in the world, shall we say? So, I hope
In these days, who is though? Like,
yeah,
so many races. It's
not a criticism per se. Like, it does need work, absolutely, but
who doesn't? But equally as well, if you look at the riders that have come back down from MotoGP, it's not easy.
oh, absolutely, I think it's worse than stepping up.
Yeah, agreed. But to come down from MotoGP and still be fighting at the front, he's done better than all the other guys that have done the same. So you look at Luti or Hernandez, I think it was years ago.
Yeah.
He's the one that stuck to it and going well.
Yeah, it's frustrating because he can do it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think for him, he knows he can do it.
Yeah.
But no, I hope for him it works out and that he can be continuous contender.
Yes.
He's in the right team to do so.
Yes, absolutely. The only other A-star team apart from IO, in my opinion. So, yeah. Onto the MotoGP sprint. Marc Marquez. I didn't expect that.
No, I didn't. But hats off to him. It's Marc Marquez. It's surprising, but don't be surprised.
Yeah, that's it. It's like should we be surprised?
I was surprised seeing him on the Friday. He had a few crashes on the Friday, and if I'm honest, I even said to Aki, I said, the guy looks scared to jump on that bike now.
Yes.
He scratches his head. How did that happen? But then he crashes again in the next session, but he's also fast. So, yeah, I'm surprised for Honda, but not surprised for Marc.
Yeah, that's the best way to put it. Is I was shocked he was able to put the Honda as high as it was. Kota was an anomaly. Like, I didn't expect it to work here.
No, but I think he was using the Kalex chassis this weekend. But regardless of that, I know Rins was speaking to a friend of mine in Alpine Star, and he just said, you look at the data, you think, how he's an alien. We, as other riders on the Honda, we cannot replicate what he does on that bike.
Yes.
The way he brakes so late, gets it stopped, can turn it, is just, it's unbelievable. So
he makes the V almost handbrake turn.
Yeah, but while maintaining speed.
It's just it's so genuinely I think people don't realise how good Marquez is, even though he's an 8-time world champion. I don't think people.
I would be fascinated to see what he can do on a different bike, just out of curiosity.
Put him on a KTM, he would absolutely wipe the floor with anybody. Like, we've seen the KTM doesn't mind being out of shape with Brad Binder.
Well, this is true. Yeah, exactly.
That's why I say KTM over Duke.
I think he'd be able to adapt, but I think the KTM will be able to maybe control his riding more than the Ducati. Maybe I don't know, but it needs. It'd be fascinating to see what he could do on a different bike. But
but I mean, potentially, but not potentially. Obviously, we've all heard the rumours that he's going to KTM with Pedro Starnieva. Nah, absolutely not. Sorry.
Every year there's some sort of nonsense that comes out. Like, until it's official, I don't believe it.
Yeah. I think that's how you have to treat it. Like, obviously, I've got the Instagram.
Theoretically, he's still contracted with Honda as well.
Yeah.
So somehow he'd have to buy out of that and
25 million a year. You know that.
But equally, that money could go into develop Honda, so you don't know.
Yeah, so because that's the only question mark I've ever had about Marc Marquez is his development. He doesn't seem to like to give others a good bike, shall we say?
I don't think it's not that he doesn't want others to have a good bike. I think maybe Honda have developed around him, which is what other people can't ride.
Yes.
I think that's probably more what it is. Who do you follow? Like in anything in life, if someone's doing good, you tend to follow their direction. Versus the guys that aren't doing good. and you sort of expect the lower level guys to step up to what the top guys are doing. I mean, to be fair, you saw was it last year when he didn't participate in the majority of the season? When they focused with Nakagami and Nakagami and Marquez, his brother, the bike looked like it was getting better.
Yeah.
On average.
Yes. Agreed.
But all the riders that jump on it don't have it easy there. So I hope for Honda and the riders on board that they manage to find something going forward.
Yes, me too. Because
I feel like they've got to do a bit of a reset.
Because like, not only do you have to ride a Honda that isn't working if you go to Honda, you also have to beat Marc Marquez on a Honda. It's just like it's basically the odds are zero. You know what I mean? Like, it's very rare you're going to be able to, like, you might beat him over 1 or 2 races, but very rare you're going to consistently beat Marquez over a season.
Exactly. So it's tough for them at the moment, but Honda are relying on Marc to stay fit and give them the points.
Yeah, and then that's the flip side, isn't it? Is relying on Marc to stay fit on a bike that wants to kill him.
Yeah, that's where they pay him the money, though. You know, that's where he earns his money.
Yeah,
to ride that bike.
Yeah, like, well, you'd have to pay someone a lot of money to risk the amount Marquez risks on that bike.
Yeah, and give Honda what Marquez can give. So it's a difficult one, but I feel for Honda and I feel for Marc. It's not an easy position for anyone to be in.
No, it really ain't. We've seen time and again that the eggs in one basket tactic just does not work. We've seen it over the past 4 or 5 seasons alone with Marquez and now Fabio.
Yeah, but
Fabio to a lesser extent, admittedly, because the bike itself is not great.
No, but in the Honda camp now, let's say 4 bikes on the grid. I don't know what the riders are saying. You don't know what they're saying. One rider could be saying it's this. One rider could be saying it's that. Don't know what equipment there, because I think when Rins was given Marquez's chassis and he said he didn't like it or something in Argentina.
Yes.
You know, you don't know what equipment they're all on that's the same, and so it's very difficult to understand at that level who's got what and how to manage that situation.
Yeah, because Marc crashed both chassis. He had one Kalex, one Honda, and he crashed both. Mia, the same. The LCR boys have not actually gotten the Kalex chassis yet, which does suck for them.
Interesting.
I believe Rins was supposed to test it at Jerez, but Bradl crashed it at turn 5. Mia went out on it, did 1 installation lap, and it broke. So Rins was not able.
Yeah,
so,
not sure what was going on there, but
Rins is already making noises that he's unhappy with not being treated like a factory rider. But surely he must have expected to not be treated like a factory rider when he's not a factory rider.
It depends, because if he's got a Honda contract, then he wants some level of something. At the end, he's actually doing better than Mia.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Like, he's got a Honda contract, but so did Alex Marquez, and he's made the same noises that Honda have just not taken him on board, not giving him what he wants. Hence the leaving. Still,
maybe that's how Honda works.
Yeah, maybe that's the Honda way. Still, the bike is, the rider is less important. It's always been the same, and it's worked for him up until now.
Yeah.
So, I touched on Yamaha struggles and Fabio. I know you think I don't like Fabio. That's not the case. But damn, he struggled this weekend.
No, they are struggling. They are struggling. Sometimes, even as a rider, you've seen what he can do on that bike, and they have the A package there that is competitive. But this year, I think it's blown out. Blown out of proportion. You see, in my opinion, KTM and Ducati have made such a step.
Yes.
Especially with aero. And again, like we said earlier, Honda and Yamaha, they've not taken the step in aero that the others have. You look, they've only got the front winglet moustache, I call it. whereas the other bikes have got seat units, belly pans, side panels, so much more that
It's a
adds down.
whole, isn't it? The KTM and the
Yeah,
Ducati, like whereas like it's all a flow into flow kind of thing.
yeah, and I think the biggest thing that I see when I watch the bikes is how stable they are in the mid corner now. Like from releasing the brakes to mid corner, and actually how they can maintain that speed and opening. The Ducatis, KTM's, and Aprilias are just another level. Yamaha look more stable than the Honda, but they then what was a bike that was good for corner speed, they are losing out on now because the others have caught up with aerodynamic, I feel. Because they've never been the fastest bike, but they were able to corner well.
Yes.
But the Honda as well. If you look at the Honda, I think I said before, they're the bike and the riders that have to make up the most on the brakes. But that bike looks so out of control because the aero doesn't keep it stable.
Yeah.
Actually, I spoke with Augusto this weekend, and in Jerez you saw Danny Pedrosa with the square tailpiece.
Yes. when you messaged me, they've got a TV, and I was like, "What the hell are you on about?"
Yeah, I didn't know if I was putting any leg, but everyone labelled it as this. But when Augusto used that, he just said how stable it made the rear bike feel in the braking phase. So you look at the triangle one and the square one, and you think, really, what's the difference? But it made a difference. Then I know that there was further stuff. I don't know if you saw some pictures with the front aero that basically went from the top all the way to the bottom of the belly pan.
Yes.
From the test, and he said with that on, he goes, the bike was just perfect. But coming to Le Mans, obviously with MotoGP, you can get 2 aero upgrades through the season.
Yes.
So coming to Le Mans, Augusto said to the team, look, if you can try and give me the same amount of load and force on the rear under braking, he goes, we can make a step without the aero package.
And so it proved.
And, well, what was funny, I think if you see on day one, he still had the triangle airpiece.
Yeah.
And on day 2, he said to the team, if I can get that square piece, he goes, I'll get it into Q2.
Yeah.
And he jokingly said that with the team, and the team laughed, but they obviously gave it to him, and he got it into Q2.
Well,
So
still ain't stupid, as we've touched on before.
No, but sort of going back to the aero point is that just those little steps and developments that KTM are bringing out, that Ducati have done in the last few years, shows how much of a part aero is making now. And it's just something I don't see Yamaha and Honda doing.
Yeah, like K-Lex frame is a huge part, still a big step for Honda. But
I think the last 2 years now, especially this year, is all about aero.
Yeah, it's aero not the silver bullet, is it?
It's really what's taken the bikes to the next level now.
Yeah, absolutely. Like as much as I admire K-Lex, it's not Honda's silver bullet. It's a good step, a good base, certainly. Compared to the standard one, the riders have all given positive feedback on it.
Yeah,
but it ain't going to be the silver bullet they need.
No. So, but geez, aerodynamic, Formula One, even this now, the money involved in producing. I mean, Formula One's got a lot. Maybe it's a bit more simple because the cars are quite static. Bikes change in all axis.
Yes.
So to try and understand bike aerodynamic, I think is maybe a bit more complicated than cars. So having the right people there to develop that, there's probably not many.
Yeah.
So they've got to invest to try things and do stuff. But for me, that's where MotoGP is now. And
because obviously KTM have Red Bull Formula One engineers in this and the other, but they have to be right.
Yeah, but so I was speaking to a Red Bull engineer in Jerez, and basically the bike side, KTM developed their own aero package. They then teamed up with Red Bull Formula One, and a couple of engineers there developed what they thought they'd like to see on a bike. And then for the Jerez test, though two engineers came from Formula One Red Bull
Yes.
and Law. And in the end, they actually combined both, and that combined package was actually what they preferred. The
Yes.
riders preferred. So, yeah, you've got to start. If KTM have made that step, other manufacturers now have to start making this step. You know, if they're investing, other people have to invest. And it works. Look what the riders said. I think let's see what package that KTM come out with the second half of the season, and I think that will be the one. In fact, let's even Mugello. You know, I think the factory guys might even have an updated aero in Mugello. I think that will be.
Oh my god! Again.
No, but for instance, because if you can bring it out twice in a year, once the second one's come out, means you can't update it anymore. If I'm correct, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But so if they get it in Mugello, okay, it means they can't get it anywhere else. But Mugello, you've got one of the longest straights.
Yeah.
You need it.
Is the rear aero counting on that?
No, rear aero is free, so you could redesign the rear aero on the seat as much as you want. That is not part of the side fairings.
How long until that becomes a thing?
Not this year.
Yeah, very. The amount of difference it's making now.
But equally, they could use that to an advantage and change that from track to track.
Well, that's what I was thinking. Like if you need like lower downforce, for example, a bit more top speed, because like the TV one, is it the square? That's surely more draggy than the triangle.
That I don't know. That's not my expertise, but the riders like it, you know, and it's working.
Yeah, and because one thing that does seem to, I don't know if I'm right. Maybe you can tell me. The KTM seems to upset the bikes behind a lot as well, in terms of its aero. Like you see a lot of riders struggling in the braking zone behind a KTM.
I'd also say the same behind a Ducati.
Ducati to a lesser extent, yes, but the KTM is very pronounced, like in my opinion. Like I don't know if I'm right or not, but
I need to see more. I'd put KTM and Ducati on the same level from what I've seen. From a Honda and Yamaha perspective, anyway, when you see how they have to brake behind them, it's very different.
Yes, I'm basing that on the lesser aero, even Aprilia to a point, because the relations said that Aprilia can't follow anymore, and I'm wondering.
Yeah, but there was an onboard shot. I think it was Marquez on Bagnaia, and coming out of the last corner on the straight before banking, he could stay. Then all of a sudden, the Ducati just starts pulling away, and you're like, okay.
Yeah, poor Mark.
Well, Mark's going to then make it up into turn one, which he did.
Every time.
Made that entertaining in the sprint races, but that's just where his riding style comes in, and yeah,
just incredible. Yeah. Jorge Martin took his first win of the season in any form. About time.
Yeah, for sure, about time. He when he's on the bike, he's strong. I just hope it continues for him. You know, I think he, I believe, was rumoured for Yamaha.
Yes, I'm going to bring that up, actually. He's actually said this weekend that it's looking likely he will stay at Pramac.
But for me, you have to, because on a prime...
Absolutely.
Like, he's still relatively young. He's got a long career ahead of him. You know, maybe he doesn't get the factory Ducati seat, but he at least has the ability to be fighting at the front on that bike.
I don't think Pramac is a disadvantage anymore. I really don't.
I don't think any bike. Look at VR46. I don't think they're an advantage either. So no, for Martin, it's been a long time coming. Let's see if it continues. I hope for him and the team it continues again. It's once you get that taste in a season, it could go one of two ways, but usually it goes the better way. And I think you'll see him more at the front.
Yeah, because he runs the different aero. Him and Zarco actually run the ground effect fairing, whereas both factory boys run the downwash ducts. And I'm wondering if that is just the slight difference, which is why the factory bike is strong everywhere. Like, is he being forced to run it, I wonder?
So although theoretically, no, that would be rider choice. I think with the factory teams, and this applies to all of them, the riders are more forced to try the new stuff because they need the data.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's what I was thinking with Martinez, because he is on a 23.
He's on the 23 bike, but he's, for instance, the same at Gas. I know that, for instance, theoretically, they have got the same bikes at the start of the season, but when developments come through, it always goes to the factory team first.
Yeah.
And it's always there for probably 2 races. And then if they can start to produce more, then it will go to the satellite squads.
Yeah.
So
I was actually quite impressed with KTM giving Augusto the same things that they gave the factory boys at the Jerez test.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, they need to, because you've got Pedrosa, who's super small, Miller relatively big, and Augusto, who's big. So they've got to see if it works across the whole board. And also, they want to keep. From a management point of view, you've got to keep riders happy and motivated. If a rider doesn't ever get new parts, they start questioning their authority and how are the management invested in them. So they need to keep being given stuff to keep them motivated, but also because they were confident it was going to work and confident in his feedback. So yeah.
Well, KTM last year is a very good example of what you've just said, in my opinion.
Yeah, they're learning.
Yeah, that's just what I was about to say. It's great to see that they've learned eventually. It took a whole season, and like, granted, there were, bits and bobs going on behind the scenes that we don't see. But for them to actually have learned their lesson and give Augusto the same parts at the same time to test, that's a lot of trust for a rookie. The only rookie, no less.
It is, but equally, I think you can see the difference for whatever reason, but Augusto's closer to the front compared to rookies last year.
Better base, in my opinion. A much better base.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. The bike looks different from last year. So it's hard to compare on the riding. But he's coming, he's staying professional. I know the team really enjoy working with him. So he deserves to get parts to try.
Yes, that's it. Like that's the main word, isn't it? Deserves. He's earned his way to it. He's been continually improving, continually getting better and better each week. And we'll touch on him properly in a bit, but I'm very impressed with Augusto Fernandez so far.
Definitely.
Hopping on to the main race. First thing I want to discuss is the amount of crashes. What the hell, Le Mans? Every year.
Yeah, funny enough, I said this to someone. I said every year is whether it's wet or dry, Le Mans just has crashes. Whether it's because it's predominantly a car track, I know they do the 24-hour bikes, but they don't necessarily say it's bumpy. But yeah, the level of grip there is less. Admittedly, though, I have to say this year, Moto2, Moto3, there were not crazy crashes like there has been in the past. But okay, Albert crashed, and it took down 2 other riders, but the other 2 riders didn't crash on their own, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And in Moto3, there wasn't crazy crashes. But if I'm honest, MotoGP this year is difficult. Look at in America, every rider was in the points.
Same here.
And here as well, exactly. I mean, Folger, hats off to him. He's getting more points now than he did when he was probably with Yamaha. I mean, I don't know, but
aside from a second place in Germany, he didn't really light the world on fire. So yeah.
Yeah. So I think maybe is that the aero that's playing a part? With the conditions, the racing. Yeah, there are more crashes. The riders are pushing the limits more to be closer to the front and
tire pressure rules.
I think I want to say that only came into place this weekend. Like there've been tire pressure rules, but the problem is that a lot of guys are running 2 tire pressures now. More because they've got to have the tyre pressure that is set from Dorna, Erta, but they want to know what the reference is with their old tyre sensors, because apparently the sensors are reading differently.
Great.
Yeah, I know. So it could be tyre pressures. I don't think they've got so many compounds to choose from this year.
No, I was just thinking more in terms of a narrower operating window for the tyre pressures.
Yeah, and I think, an aero doesn't help that. Aero, if that's given so much more downforce, that's putting much more strain on the tyres, exactly. Whether it squishes or depending on what pressure they put in, it could just behaves differently. But yeah, a rider, though, has to manage that. That's part of being at this level. You have to manage all situations. So you've got to find the limit and control that. Maybe riders are still learning that limit with this aero package. Who knows?
Well, Pecco especially, as touched on last time you were on, we clarified about what he said about his bike with the limit, like he just can't feel it.
Exactly. So maybe that's something to play. But I don't necessarily think it's the pressures, but MotoGP now and all of the crashes are front end.
Yeah, it's very rare you see a high side anymore.
Exactly. So that for me points more in the downforce direction.
Yeah, I'm wondering if maybe it is the downforce that good that when it gets disturbed, it really upsets the front.
I wouldn't say it upsets the front. It's just at the end of the day, like the riders they're on the limit. Like if they've got half a degree more banking, that's over the limit.
Yeah.
Half a degree to a normal human can barely see that with your eye.
Visible, yeah, quite literally.
So, that's just what they've got to work with, and it's down to the rider then if they try and push that limit or just stay reserved.
Tough call.
I thought to myself, was it this? It was the Sunday race, or race was it Saturday or Sunday when the 3 KTM's crashed? It was Saturday, and all three, other than Folger, the rest of the KTM's all crashed at turn 7. Is that a coincidence, or was that something with the package? I don't know.
Well, once is a coincidence, twice is a pattern. That's how I treat it.
Well, exactly, but
turn 7 is a very hard corner anyway. That's the only thing that possibly would skew it.
Possibly, but
no, I'd back you on that. I really would, because it can't be a coincidence. Like Folger, I assume, had he been at his absolute limit, would also have crashed it.
Maybe, but yeah, they were things that I would question as an engineer, and I'd sort of try and look at the data to see if there was a pattern for that corner and see if they can learn from it.
Yeah. So because turn 7 is a museum, right?
Yeah, where Pedro went down. Yeah, the museum. But I'm not familiar with names. I just know numbers.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I would look at, just to see. And I then start to look at how much load is on the bike in that corner, on the front, on the rear. Do we get that in other corners? Are we having issues in other corners? That's how I'd approach it, and maybe you can try and learn from that and take some of that risk away. Maybe they've got to change the balance of the bike or something. I don't know. But yeah,
it's all a learning thing, isn't it? Especially if you bring a new aero in each time, you have to learn. Like, you're not just going to nail it. Like, same as what you said earlier with Moto2. Anything. You can't just pick something up and perfect it. If you can do that, then you're pretty special.
Exactly.
Staying on KTM and Augusto Fernandez, I actually wanted to spotlight him because very, very impressed with him. P4 in Le Mans, incredible, but he was threatening a good finish all weekend.
I was going to say it comes down from his practices and his qualifying. I mean, don't get me wrong. Obviously, last year he got his first win in 3 years in Moto2, so he loves the track. But also, regardless of that, I think it's given him confidence that he can be in MotoGP at the front.
Yes.
He can qualify and get into Q2 now. He's got the ability, and I think he's showing that to KTM, to the world. But he managed the weekend very well, in my opinion. I think he took the wrong tyre choice for the race, on the sprint race, which is why he dropped back and was trying to push but didn't get a feeling.
Yeah.
But he chose differently for the long race. And granted, he had a few crashes in front of him, and whatnot. I think he overtook about 3 people. I think 4 people crashing. But regardless, the way I look at it, even if you added those people in that had crashed, he made up positions and would have been in the top 10, which is bloody impressive.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
But on the flip side of that, you've also got to be in it to win it, or on it to be there. And he finished the race and fully deserved it. You know, he was in control. Nobody overtook him. That was the other thing. Nobody overtook him.
Yeah. And Leish couldn't, despite having 6 or 7 laps to do so.
Exactly. So, for me, yeah, really hats off to him, and I really hope he continues. And I hope it gives the belief to KTM that we've got a rider here that can ride the bike that's a rookie, you know?
Yes. Which is rare.
The last time rookies in MotoGP did well on a Ducati, not even on a Yamaha or a Honda from years gone by. So
historically, the KTM boys have never been. The rookies have found it really hard to handle.
No, in the past the Yamaha was the easiest bike to ride. I'd say now Ducati's up there, probably overtaken. But look, let's see. I mean, you've got 8 Ducati bikes there, and last year was 3-4 rookies on it, sort of thing. So, yeah, Augusto's not disappointing. Regardless of being the only rookie, you wouldn't know he's an only rookie this year.
No, he's looking seasoned already. Like, he's continued an upward trajectory each race, which I think is the most encouraging thing. Which is why I also don't feel like this 4th place is actually out of character. It's nor a flash in the pan, in my opinion, because he's continued to improve each and every time he's got on that bike.
Exactly, and I don't think, having known Augusto, it's not going to make him be ambitious for the next race. He'll know that it's possible, but it won't be his target. You know, next race it might be, okay, let's get closer to the top 10.
Yeah.
Sort of, he's realistic. But, you know, in the next few races, if he stays on the bike, he can finish in those positions again.
Yes, definitely. And he's also making himself unsackable, in my opinion, if he continues this.
Exactly. No, that's the biggest thing. And I think when he gets that contract extension, I think you'll see a different rider. He'll be much more relaxed, and I think you'll just see another level come out of him.
Am I right in saying he does have a 2-year contract?
1+1.
Yeah, so I don't see any reason.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know what requirements have to be met for him to stay, but there obviously he's pushing for a 2-year contract. I mean, already before the first race they were pushing for it because you want that stability in that job. But if I'm honest, 5 races in, there's not a negative thing I would say about Augusto staying there at all.
No.
I think he's doing fantastic for the brand, fantastic for Gas and KTM, and deserves it.
Yeah, he very, very much deserves it. Aside from one DNF at Portimao where the bike broke off the line, he's finished every race as well. And the sprint, he crashed the sprint in Le Mans, but like up until then, to finish the amount he did, where everybody, you know, far more experienced heads around him have been throwing it away left and right.
Yeah,
like, very impressive, very, very impressive.
He deserves it. So I hope management see that and offer him something.
Yeah, like we say, KTM have learned their lessons. I hope they have continued to do so and will give him an extension, because if they don't, that's a travesty, in my opinion.
I think, in my opinion, if they don't give him something, they will not get riders in the future.
Yes, agreed.
I think that's also something they have to look at, because what rider wants to go there, regardless of if it's performing well or not, and be unsure if they've got a ride the following year?
Yeah, I think aside from Pedro, nobody could be sure that they would get a long contract with KTM. So if Augusto can buck that trend, and if they say suddenly, oh, we're not keeping in Fernandez, Pedro might then think, Christ, no, what do I have to do then? Because he's done so well and he's not even being kept.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's question marks, but I think that it not only ease Augusto, I think it will ease everyone about KTM as a business and manufacturer if they get that signed.
Yeah, I would lose a lot of confidence in KTM's decisions if they don't. That simple.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm outside of the paddock losing confidence, what would it be like internally?
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, the Augusto, unsackable, fantastic. I'm thrilled to see this. I really am.
And having worked with him, and obviously with the title last year, every champion deserves that. But he's just keeping his mentality, his focus, and proving to the world he is a world champion, and just head down, grinding it out, and as we say, deserves it.
Typical Augusto, innit? Not flashy, but
also a sidetrack from that though. Look at Augusto's route into this racing world. He never did Moto3, and he never did. He did Stock 600. Was it the Super Sport, but the European edition?
Yeah.
And then worked his way into Moto2.
Yeah,
so he's only ever been on.
Thank you.
He's only ever been on the middleweight bikes, but he's never been on a big bike or a small bike. So, and I think there was a lot of question marks there as well. That he's been on the 600 so long. Is he going to adapt? He damn well has.
Yeah, I agree. That was my only real concern about him, was he's the sole rookie. Adaptation might be harder being a sole rookie, but I think he's turned it on his head in that he's taken his direction.
I think, you know what? I think it's one less pressure for him, because you're not competing with anyone then. It's not like, I've got to beat that rookie or this. It's like he's all in it for himself. So it's probably actually the better thing for him.
Yeah, agreed. So yeah, very, very much a round of applause for Augusto Fernandez. I want to get your opinion on the big incident that happened in the race with Pecco Bagnaia and Maverick Viñales.
Yeah.
Let's hear your take on it first, and I'll see if I agree, because I think we might have different opinions on this one.
My opinion changed when I saw the replays. At first, I thought it was Maverick's fault. But then I wasn't looking at the TV at the time. And so I saw Maverick sort of lose control and hit Bagnaia. Rewind a corner before, he overtook Bagnaia, and Bagnaia tried to overtake back. For me, there wasn't a place for Bagnaia to go.
Yes.
So then I started to think it was Bagnaia's fault. But on the flip side, for me, it was just a racing incident. That is a old school racing incident.
Okay.
Two riders trying to go for the same bit of track. Yeah, and actually, I know we spoke about it before and all the penalties and stuff like that, but I respected Bagnaia on the Saturday. I thought he was going to have a bit of argy-bargy with Marquez after the race. I saw, and not until I listened to what they said, and they said that was good racing. It was close, aggressive racing. But what Bagnaia was questioning was, a week before in Jerez, he got penalised for something else, where no riders crashed, but he got penalised.
Yes.
And all he's questioning is, why is there a penalty one race but not a penalty the next race for something so similar?
Yeah, I deliberately avoided speaking about the stewards because I'll go down an absolute rant of a rabbit hole. So I'm just
so I respect Bagnaia for bringing that up, because it's true. There does need to be clarity, but on the flip side, they did not penalise Marquez for that, which was interesting.
Yeah.
After the week before. But I think also Bagnaia accepted that because he liked that sort of racing. And I think that is Bagnaia promoting to the sport and the race direction that that's how racing should be.
Yes, I agree.
So I think that's good. But then on to Sunday, and from a say an old school fan, but I'm not old school. It's just let's say until the last few years, that would have been a typical racing incident. Two riders battling out for the same bit of track. One rider's tried one track. Okay, probably Vinales was a bike width wider, which allowed the door for Bagnaia, but it wasn't meant to be. You could have said Bagnaia should have anticipated Vinales coming up the inside
Yes.
and blocking off that move.
Yes, see, now that's where Pecco, not a fault per se, but should have been smarter, in my opinion.
Yes. And if there's anything to criticise, I would say that's what it should be, is that Bagnaia should have given it away and tried again, different corner or next lap.
Just held a wider line, knowing full well Vinales was not only inside you, but ahead slightly. Vinales was never going to disappear. I mean, like, you were never making the apex that he tried to make, and he should have recognised that. Like,
yeah,
I don't think Vinales did anything wrong in my opinion. He did a move. He went wide in the corner, but he had the inside and he was away.
If you've made a move and you've got more corner speed, you're going to go wider.
Yeah, but the fact that Pecco did not recognise that and adjust is where I think I'm not going to say fault because that implies this should be a penalty or something, but he should have definitely been smarter about it.
But on the flip side, it's a right-hander. If you're on a right-hander and the guy that's just overtaken you has gone wide, you're lent over the bike, so you can't see how wide he's gone. So before he's changed direction, he can't see where Vinales is. So he's just got on the throttle to try and he's actually on the better line, although Vinales is in front. So as he's tried to, it's not until the bike's more upright, he then sees Vinales next to him and coming into him. So,
but surely he would have seen Vinales, known Vinales was at least there, because he would have seen him pass him initially.
Of course. But then as you're both upright, you've got two riders side by side going for the same time. It's not like the Fabio incident in Jerez where he's behind and can see what's happening in front. You've got two riders that one can't see the other.
Yeah, but what I'm trying, maybe I worded it. What I'm trying to say is, Pecco will have known that Vinales was at least around, and surely he will have known that Vinales was going to be at least in that area then. So at what point do you stop and think, okay, if I turn in now, there's a potential that he's there, and that this could be bad?
Yeah, I mean that. Yes, it's true. Again, that's for the riders to call. I mean, things happen like in a split second, so it's so hard to call. And you've got to be in the racer's mind to do that. But ultimately, if I was a steward, you'd either give that as a racing incident, or you'd give a penalty to Bagnaia to keep consistency.
Yeah, like that. That's the thing, and it's like Pecco.
In my heart of hearts, as if I want to continue watching bike racing without penalties, I'd say that was a racing incident.
Yeah.
And also, you don't even need to go to race control. Look what happened. Okay, yes, they had a bit of an argy-bargy in the gravel.
Bit of handbags, yeah.
But within 2 minutes then of getting back to the pits, they've sorted out among themselves. Yeah. And I think that is a great example to race direction of how quick things can be resolved.
Yeah, you don't need to penalise for the next race.
No, and exactly. Whether they've said to themselves, look, let's get along. It was, we won't get a penalty sort of thing for the camera. Who knows? But genuinely, I think that they've realised they were both going for the same tarmac.
Yeah.
It was a racing incident from their point of view. Okay, if it goes to race direction, I think it's unfair.
Yeah, it absolutely should not. Like that's what I first and foremost I do want to say. Even though I'm saying about Pecco, it is a racing incident. Nobody should be penalised for it. Your penalty is you've ended up in the gravel and lost 25 points.
But what the race direction need to take from this, though, is how they observe things in the future. Observing what happened between Marquez and Pecco on the Saturday, that people and riders want close, aggressive racing.
Yeah, definitely.
To then this racing incident with Bagnaia and Maverick. I think that they have to keep that as a guidance.
Because to further it, Alex Marquez has a 3-place grid penalty going into Mugello for the first lap incident with Brad Binder. Now, I don't agree with that in the slightest.
I mean, I didn't see what happened. All I saw was Binder went from, like, I don't know, 8th down to 16th or something like this. I can't remember.
He just bonked him up, basically. Nothing major.
But no one touched.
Yeah, there was contact. That's the thing.
Okay,
there was contact. Minimal, but there was. It should have just been drop a position, job done.
Which is what they did to Bagnaia the week before.
Yeah, right? Which is what they did to Bears for his... Well, I'm not going to say dive bomb because he wasn't trying to pass Mark. But when he forced Marquez wise at Garage Fair, he dropped the position for it. That's all there should have been. Why is he getting penalised 3 positions in the next race for a first lap incident?
That for me that's harsh. And I think I saw somewhere it was like, you were too ambitious for this move. And I'm like, sorry, you've got to be ambitious in this sport.
Yeah, right.
You've got to. At the end of the day, they all deserve to be there. All of them are as more or less as good as each other. They can all do the same thing as each other. It's racing, you know. There's a bit of contact, and so I feel sorry for Alex. Things don't seem to be going his way. But again, you know, Binder didn't have a bad race after that.
No.
Okay, he wasn't where he or Cater wanted to be, but he got his way back and whatnot.
Yeah, he made a mistake which further penalised him, but it was his own mistake. You know?
Yeah.
And like Marini complaining on Friday or Saturday about Binder, and Binder didn't even touch him. And come on, like there needs to be some limit. Not only with the riders complaining, like at some point just say, look, just shut up and get on with it. But at the same time, I think we need an independent panel. One member of IRTA, one member of Dorna, one rider of the riders choosing, or representative of the riders choosing. Done.
Yes, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
Of course not. It's because it takes the power away from Dorna.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a shame it's the way it's going, but with the whole incident of Marquez, Bagnaia, and Bagnaia, Vinales, I'd like to say they're learning because they haven't penalised for what everybody likes to watch racing for. But then, they go the opposite direction with Alex. So let's see.
Yeah, I absolutely do not agree with the Alex Marquez penalty. Just do not. At most, it should have been a drop of position.
Yes,
which would
to
have
keep
been
consistent.
Would have been fair. He did make contact with Binder. He did force Binder wide. Okay, the harshness is just it's baffling, absolutely baffling. But
baffles everyone.
Yep, it absolutely does. On to the last point I wanted to make about MotoGP. Marco Bezzecchi, title contender? Question mark.
I'd love to say he would be. Again, having worked with him in 2019, he's such a good and talented guy. Again, thoroughly deserves it. They all do, but he deserves it. But again, he's just there, and he's riding with confidence.
On the crest of a wave, isn't he?
I would love to say title contender. I think he could be top 3, but I struggle to see satellite teams winning, in my opinion, because look at the history of MotoGP. Only factories have ever won.
Yes, that's the major thing. You know full well if it's between Pecco and Bears, Ducati are going to say, red bike win, on you go.
Exactly. I'd like to think they wouldn't, but I think that's what would happen. But I think what it's doing for Bez is actually securing his future within the Red Umbrella.
Well,
In my
rumours
opinion,
already that he's going to be moved to Pramac next year.
I've heard that as well.
So, would make sense in my opinion. Absolutely.
But I don't know. Is that a backward step? Why not give him a factory bike? Because at least the team know him, and the team, and he's with the same people rather than learning new people, stuff like that. Like, I think he'd be
unless it's Yamaha going to VR46. So the only way they can possibly keep Bez is Pramac or Primoz Gresini.
If that's the case, then yeah, choose Primac.
If VR46 stay Ducati, I completely agree with you. Stay with what you know, the environment you're comfortable with. But if they are moving him to Pramac, that says to me that Yamaha are going to be running VR46 as their satellite.
There's no surprise there.
No, absolutely not. So I don't know. I'd love him to win the title, and I'd like for him to get it done before the final races, so that he doesn't have to make a decision, when Ducati aren't forced their hand. But consistency could well pay off for him, yeah.
Especially with these sprint races, like look how many people are not finishing the sprint races because it's so close and whatnot. Like it's he's just being consistent. I mean, Martin took away the most points in Le Mans with a first and a second, but Bez has had that a few times this year, and now he's just won his first ever MotoGP race. Again, home race for him and Mugello.
Well, not first ever dry race. So he won the Arge race, didn't he? Argentina.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, that was a sprint race, wasn't it?
No, he won the main.
He won the main. Okay, well, yeah, okay, he's won his second race then.
Yeah, first ever dry race. Like that alone.
Okay, but that's proven to himself he can do it in wet and dry.
Yeah, exactly.
And Mugello's the next race, and then the end of the triple headers, Assen, where he got his first podium. So he
could come out of this at Assen leading the championship. He's only a point off now.
Again, I think it's too early to start thinking about the championship.
No, I'm not saying championship win, but the confidence boosting the arm it'll give him to come out if he is leading the championship.
No, 100. We're going to the summer break with that lead.
Yeah. Whoever's leading it's a shot in the arm.
But I think as well, for whoever's leading it and whoever's in fourth place, look at Bagnaia last year. Bagnaia was 90-odd points behind and still came through winning the championship at the summer break.
Yes.
So this also gives confidence to all riders.
But I said it last year and I will stick by it. I think Pecco was lucky that it was Fabio that he was racing last year for the title. Because the Yamaha and Fabio as a package towards the end of last year when the Ducati really improved. Anyone else, if he was facing this Bez, for example, there's no way he would have made up the 90 points.
No, agreed. So,
and that's not a slight at Fabio. That's a slight at the package and how Ducati improved compared to Yam last year.
No, 100%. But I think with Bez, I'd love him to win the title. My God, I'd love. I think for the sport, I think to have a satellite team win is unheard of.
Yeah.
I think for VR46.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it?
I think he's still then involved in the sport, because realistically, without him and Marquez, the sport has dropped off the last few years. So,
well, imagine the headline: VR46 win MotoGP title. If you put that, people will come.
And then you've got the Doctor winning it as a rider and as a team owner. That's
perfect.
That's great. Yeah. And you know what? If VR46 was to stay Ducati next year, that throws a big spanner in the works for Primac. Because they're effective being the number 2 Ducati team. And then if you've got a team that's come in and winning the title...
You have to give them the 24. You'd have to. Quite simply. Or even 124 and 123 and then do the same for Pramac. They'd have to give Bez the current bike.
Yeah. No, exactly. So, but, I mean, I don't know what contracts are, but, mean, if Bez won it this year, does that automatically give him a factory seat next year? You know.
Imagine that.
And then, no disrespect to Bastianini, can't help an injury, but then you put him in Primac or
Yeah.
VR46.
Well, I still think Anea is going to come back and be in title contention. I do. I got to be honest. Even though he's missed so many races due to the consistency, I think he's good enough to be doing what Bez is doing right now.
I hope. I hope.
Because Pecco ain't it right now, in my opinion. He's carrying the weight of that number one plate too hard.
Yeah, he needs to just take a step back and just realise that he's just got to finish.
Yeah.
Finish, and he can be strong.
Yeah, because a third place, a fourth place, a fifth place is better than a gravel place. It's that simple.
Exactly.
Like, I can't believe he's not realised this yet.
I'm sure he's realised it, but there's weight on his shoulders.
Like,
He's
realised it.
He's got to learn how to manage that. And actually, I think as well, Ducati as a manufacturer and a manager of him have to guide him as well.
They've let him get away with too much, in my opinion. And now...
Or are they not controlling the situation?
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. That they are not managing Pecco how they should. Ever since the IP3 incident last year, they handled that very poorly.
Wow. Yeah.
There's no other way to put it. They handled that very poorly.
No, of course, but I also think at the racetrack you've got to keep the riders managed properly. So they've just got to maybe reevaluate things. You know, it's not necessarily changing everything, but just reevaluate the way things are conducted, and go from there.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a good place to end it. Thank you very much for coming on again.
No worries.
I hope everybody's as happy as I was about it. So yeah, should be back next week for our Mugello preview. Unfortunately,
we've got 3 weeks off now. Oh, preview. Okay, we've got 3 weeks off now.
Yeah, well, you can come back on for the Mugello preview if you fancy.
Well, I'm making the most of the time off, I think, because the triple race next is going to be intense again.
Yeah, I wasn't planning to have you back for it, so you're more than welcome. But otherwise,
no, next time I might be on. We'll be on the summer break after Assen, I reckon.
Yep, that's fine with me. So yep, we will speak to Matt again in Assen, and thank you very much for listening. Bye.